Welcome to On Texas Football. I'm Bobby Burton, your host. I'm here in Austin. Jerry is on campus right now. We just finished coffee and football about an hour and a half ago. We had a couple things we wanted to talk about today. But the big one for us, and something that we kind of thought as a subplot of yesterday's practice, are the number of what we call first year to second year moves. We all talk about it all the time, how going from your year one of college football to year two is the single largest leap players will make, Jerry. And that's what we want to talk about today. And some of those guys facing that. Anthony Hill's expected to be a leader on the defense. He should be more refined. I mean, Pete Kwiatkowski had some interesting things to say about him on Tuesday at the press conference. You also have guys like C.J. Baxter, expected to be a starter for Texas. Guys like Jonte Cook trying to get into the rotation and maybe being one of the three wide receivers. A number of guys, right, that are expecting to make those big moves. Let's focus on a few of them right out of the gate. And let's start on the offense with guys that are expected to make big moves and perhaps already are to some degree. At running back, not only do we have Cedric Baxter, Jerry, we also have Trey Wisner that is kind of stepping forward even this early in camp, one day in, and Steve Sarkisian and Kyle Flood have already talked about it.
Yeah,
so let's start with those two, Baxter and Wisner at running back, and how fairly quickly they're guys that Texas.
Yeah, so I want to say this to your point. When I think about a topic like this, I always think about how does Texas maximize their season? And one big way they're going to maximize their season is how many of these guys make the big year one, the year two jump. And that comes through on the field. And that's going to be key because you're looking at 12, 13 members of the 2023 recruiting class being in the 2 deep, having real roles on a team that's ranked in the top 5. So we start at running back. Look, Cedric Baxter's stronger. He looks stronger. He's going to be a better player. His whole thing's staying healthy. I mean, there's a reason this staff's been so high on him since the start. He's mature. He gets pass pro. He's good out of the backfield. He's an all-around player. He's just got to stay healthy. But he looks stronger this year. I mean, and with more strength on your frame comes more confidence. And going into year two, you're more confident because you're in the system. You're stronger. You're feeling healthier. To start, Trey Wisner, he came into Texas with a wide receiver build more so than a running back build. Yesterday, he looked like a slasher running back body type.
Yes,
so he's made.
Jerry. That's like the perfect description. He looked like he had gained just enough.
Yep.
Not too much.
Yep.
Perfect.
And so those guys physically have made the strides they need to make. And to have Trey Wisner mentioned by Steve Sarkisian and Kyle Flood coming off the spring he had, then the summer he's had, tells you he's going to be more of a factor in the run game at the running back position than probably Keelan Robinson was a year ago for Texas. That's where I'm at in this. So that's the two running backs in that class that are making the year one, the year two jumps. And physically, they both look like they're ready to.
Yeah, I love it because those guys, here's my take on it. They're being asked, there's going to be more asked of them.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing that people don't realize. With Jonathan Brooks going pro, Jerry, they're actually two of the three oldest running backs in the room even. The oldest running back is Jaden Blue, and he's only going to be a junior.
Yeah.
So there's some seniority there without, I mean, you're asked, the sophomores are basically upperclassmen, and they only have 1 year experience. Baxter certainly got trial by fire last year, no doubt. I mean, he got thrown in right out of the gate, but Wisner got utilized mostly on special teams early. And then when they were running away with some games, he got put in at running back later and fared really well. So I like how you also put that, that we're looking at guys that aren't just there's expectations of them going into year two of this 2023 class, because there aren't a lot of those guys right now on the offensive line per se. Right. There's not a lot of expectations there. Next year, that will change. Some other positions. Arch Manning.
Yes.
At quarterback. I mean, he is now officially number 2, right? I mean, Malik Murphy was ahead of him last year at this time and was the second string quarterback. Arch looked good. There's going to be need for him to step up at times. As we know, Quinn Ewers, terrific quarterback, going to be a first-round pick most likely. Well, Quinn hasn't made it through a season yet unscathed or uninjured. Yep. So at some point, the young man out of New Orleans, who is from the first family of football, is going to have to step up in this regard for this team this year as well.
No doubt. And look, I think Sark will probably try to work him in some this year and get him ready, because that is, I think you're afforded to a little bit more too. You have 2 off weeks, different schedule, 12-team playoff. I won't be surprised if Sark doesn't try to get him involved a little bit more to ensure he's ready to go, knowing that Quinn hasn't made it through either season 100% yet. Arch is a better player. It's year 1 to year 2. A quarterback in Steve Sarkisian system, I don't care what family you came up in, this is a difficult system when things are moving fast at the college pace, right, of a practice. You go at these practices. This isn't a slow-moving high school practice. This is a fast-paced practice. Things move really quick. You're pushed to think really quick. And Arch is more comfortable this year. His athleticism shows more, the more comfortable he gets. His body, while he came in not looking like the normal freshman, I mean, he looks like an NFL quarterback physically right now. So he is ready to go. He looks like he is ready to make the big year 1 to year 2 jump. Where I think last year, as talented as he is, I think there would have been some reservation if he had to go start 2 games in a row just because he hadn't had much time in the system, even though he's an early enrollee. It's a system that takes time, and I think he's a more comfortable quarterback from drill to drill. You see that stuff at these open media windows because there's less hesitation.
All right. I want to flip over to defense because there's 3 guys really on defense that are no-brainers that Texas is going to unquestionably, quote unquote, rely on in that sophomore class, that freshman to sophomore run that you just talked about. I want to talk about Anthony Hill, absolute starter. Manny Muhammad, absolute starter. Derek Williams, absolute starter. But before we get to those guys, I want to say thank you to our sponsor, the University Co-op and 40 Acres Apparel. The University of Texas Co-op is not a nonprofit and has been serving the Longhorn community since 1896. Every penny of profit directly benefits course materials scholarships at UT. In fact, more than 7,000 students received free course materials in the 2023 academic year. I'm wearing 40 Acres Apparel right now on this show. It was born inside of DKR, designed and built exclusively for the University of Texas and Longhorn Nation. Go down to the University Co-op or go to universityofTexasCoop.com and get geared up with 40 Acres Apparel. Great designs, fashionable, high quality, SPF 50. That helps when we're out there covering practice, Jerry. Moisture wicking as well. It's just a super great product. Looks great, feels great. 40 Acres is also proud to sponsor the course material scholarship for University of Texas students as well. All right, let's go to that defensive side of the ball, Jerry, that we just talked about. You look at it right now. I mentioned Anthony Hill, Manny Muhammad, Derek Williams. Got to have big sophomore years from those 3.
Yeah, look, Anthony Hill and Manny Muhammad were freshman All-American team level guys last year.
Yep.
So their expectations different than any of the guys we just talked about on offense. And Cedric Baxter, maybe he comes on and has that type of year if he's healthy. I think that's a year away from him. But for Anthony Hill, he could be an all-SEC performer. Manny Muhammad could be an all-SEC. And I'm not saying first team, second team, third team level performers. Texas has to get that out of them to maximize this season. Anthony Hill's got to go from being a see-ball, go-hit guy with ball player, which I think he's tremendous at, to more of an all-around linebacker this year. More comfortable. Hell, he may wear the headset. He may be the guy communicating all of it. There's a lot on his plate to be an all-SEC level performing linebacker for this team if they're going to finish ranked where they start, and that's top 5 team in the country. Same can be said for Manny Muhammad. He is by far the best corner in the program. He is arguably, him and Anthony Hill are arguably 2 of the top 5 guys Texas has to have stay healthy all season. But Manny Muhammad could be an all-SEC level performer on some level of these all-SEC teams, and he's got to perform like that for Texas because the other corner spots, they have some questions to work out there, and depth behind Manny Muhammad, that is a question that has to be answered. So he has to perform at that level, him and Anthony Hill. Then there's Derek Williams, who I think had a really solid freshman year last year. And I always go back to Sark and even Michael Griffin on Longhorn Network saying this guy could be a first-round pick one day. And I don't disagree with him talent-wise. This is the year he needs to take the big step too. He's got to become, especially as much as Texas struggled at the safety position last year, they're better with Makuba, Derek Williams being a sophomore, Michael Taft returning in his role, and some of the younger guys. They have more athleticism that are actually safeties this year. But Derek Williams needs to become a guy that after this season is being talked about that will be an all SEC level performer after his junior year. If those three things happen for Texas, they've gone a long way in maximizing this season, in my estimation.
Yeah, I think that if you don't believe in those three, there's a fundamental issue, because those, even though they are sophomores, and even though this is this big move, they're going from part of the puzzle to key pieces of the puzzle.
Yes.
They are going to be relied on. Derek Williams at safety has starts under his belt. He's got the speed. They know that they're going to need deep, more so maybe than a Michael Taft or even an Andrew Makuba, who has more experience than him. Then you look at Manny Muhammad, to your point. Look, Terrence Brooks and Ryan Watts were the starters last year, most of the year. Manny Muhammad came on about mid-year and really kind of took over a little bit there. But now it's time for him to be there from the get-go. Anthony Hill, very similar with Jalen Ford and David Benda last year. And then all of a sudden, you know what? Anthony Hill starts making plays. He's kind of like Manny Muhammad. We've got to get him in the game more. And so he starts taking and eating up snaps. Now it's his from the get-go. Yeah. It's just a different mentality that they have to step forward into. They can't be – now, none of those three, by the way, to their credit, Jerry, were waiting to be told to go get it last year. There's a reason they're going to be relied on, and that's because they've shown that they can be reliable even at a young age.
And the big thing with Derek Williams, the big part of his maturation process, making plays on the football. That's going to be the big thing for him in his maturation process. Texas needs him to make plays on the football. And if he takes that big step this year, Texas is going to be a really good team.
All right, some other players that we want to talk about that we think are a little bit differently situated. Let's go to Jonte Cook.
Yeah.
And even DeAndre Moore at wide receiver, because they're part of that 2023 recruiting class. Jonte actually kind of played his way in a little bit more than DeAndre Moore a year ago. No questions asked, right? Jonte showed a little bit more, showed some explosiveness. This year, I mean, look, he and DeAndre Moore, as far as being in a Texas uniform, have more experience than everybody else.
Right.
On a football field.
Right.
They started off both as starters in day one of practice. How long they will both stay starters is a good question. Cook looked a little bit better yesterday and showed a little something. But, look, Silas Bolden ain't standing down from anybody. I can tell you that, no matter that he's 5'8", 160. Ryan Wingo is on, just a different kind of player. And then you have Matthew Golden. So receiver and Jonte Cook and DeAndre Moore stepping up. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I think that receiver position is very difficult to come in and play as a freshman because of all the pre-snap movement. Sark trains these guys at different spots. He wants them to be able to play every spot. There's a lot that goes into playing wide receiver in Sark's scheme. So year one to year two should naturally be the big jump for these guys. And with Jonte Cook and DeAndre Moore, it has to be for a couple of reasons. First reason is, like you said, they have experience. DeAndre Moore first got out to the practice field yesterday, by the way. I'm going to keep saying that. I think that's important. Coming off a strong spring, really good spring game for him and Jonte. So Sark needs those guys to be good too, by the way. And yes, they need to be good for this team to maximize and have all six of these wide receivers to have that depth of big play potential and key play potential for this team. The other thing is Sark needs these guys to be successful. Recruiting matters as well. So we're talking about maximizing the team, but there's something else that goes into this. for Jonte Cook out of DeSoto, who was a 5-star ranked prospect, and DeAndre Moore out of St. John Bosco, who picked Texas over Georgia after backing out of his Louisville commitment. Sark needs these guys to be good players as well. So it's big for the season, it's big for recruiting, and it's big for Jonte and DeAndre Moore at Texas, because year 2, this is your opportunity to go out and have 25, 30, 35 catches for 400, 450, 500 yards on this team, because you have guys coming in from the portal that still have to adjust to the system. So while those guys have playing experience, you have system experience. So you have to make it count early on. They made it count in the spring. You have to make it count early on. And you're going to have to hold off some really talented players that are competing for snaps. They're all going to play, but competing for snaps. But again, with those guys, it's big for the season. It's also big for recruiting, though.
All right, I want to flip back over to defense now, because there's a number of other guys that are potentially rotational guys, that are worth discussing, and or pieces to the puzzle on special teams, those sorts of guys. Here are some. Warren Roberson, probably at one of the gunners at this point. Leonga Lafau, back up at middle linebacker, most likely. Darian Gillette, on the come a little bit as outside linebacker. He's behind a couple of seniors right now, and David Benda and Mo Blackwell. Then you have Colton Vosick at defensive end, who we've seen maybe he's made the most move in the last 6 months out of all those freshmen that are now sophomores. What are your thoughts on that group?
Yeah, so I think Colton Vosick's a big one, because, look, there's going to be injuries. Ethan Burke went down last year with the knee injury. Texas couldn't really give him time to get healthy, Ethan Burke, because they didn't have the depth they have this year. Colton Vosick, he provides size and motor and technique. So he's a little different. Obviously, his father played at Texas, a D-line coach at Westlake. So he comes with a little bit of different package than a Colin Simmons does. Colin Simmons is a hellacious edge rusher, right, as a freshman. Trey Moore is too. But when you line up against a Michigan or a Kentucky or a Georgia, a Colton Vosick at 6'5", 260 with playing strength and motor, he may have a real key role in some of these games this year. The teams that want to line up and run the football, I think Colton Vosick could have a role there in those games that's really impactful. Darian Gillette, obviously, I think another year of developing at linebacker is needed for him, but he's one play away from being in the 2 deep. I mean, that's just the reality of it. He's one injury away from being in the 2 deep. Warren Roberson may have as big an opportunity as any of these guys, though, because the 4th corner spot is up for grabs.
Heck, the 2nd corner spot is up for grabs.
Yeah, behind Manny Muhammad. Athletically, he's got all the gifts. Technically, he's maturing within the scheme. And I'll say this: I think based on yesterday, Bobby, watching Johnny Nansen work, there's going to be more asked of these corners this year. And so, is Warren going to be up to that part of the task? Is the question for me. I don't have any doubt after one practice yesterday that there's going to be more asked of these guys within coverages than last year. That was one thing that stood out to me about Johnny Nansen. And when you look at what he did at Arizona. So is Warren Roberson up to that task? If he's up to that task, I think he wins the number 2 job behind Manny Muhammad, which means, look, Manny Muhammad was out with a minor hamstring injury for a little bit in the spring. You're one play away from having to play starter reps. Huge opportunity for Warren Roberson.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple other guys I'd be remiss if we don't mention them. Okay. They're a little bit different in that I think they're a step behind right now. Yeah. Those other guys that we think are pressing a little bit for some playing time and trying to ease their way in. Jelani McDonald at safety. Yep. Right now, he's the number 4 safety, in my opinion. There is a clear top 3 in Taft, Williams, and Makuba.
Yep.
Yep. And if they by chance decide to move Jahdae Barron back to safety, McDonald may be pushed to the 5th. The other guys that I want to mention, Sadir Mitchell, clearly. in the press conference yesterday, or the media availability with Steve Sarkisian, he made it real clear. They're not going to make decisions on Sadir Mitchell until they see what he can do against the run.
Yeah.
Because he could be, despite any and all things to the contrary, he could be a key piece of the Texas run defense. So keep that one in mind. And then the other one Sark mentioned as well, Spencer Shannon, tight end as a inline blocker, and the importance of that. Yes, Jordan Washington, the young freshman, could be in that group as well. He mentioned both Shannon and Washington in that category. And so I think that what I'm saying here is there's not just these top end guys like an Arch or CJ Baxter, Manny Muhammad, Anthony Hill, Derek Williams. There is a second group that I think is making this big move the second year to become part of the two deep, right? And then there's also another group after that I think has a chance to play a role as we move forward. You agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. And then you look to further that, then you have the last part of the equation with that group is the guys who may be second team on the depth chart, but still need time, right? The Trevor Gooseby,
Jaden Chapman, Trevor Gooseby. Yeah.
So, but to your point, Jelani McDonald, right? I mean, he is yesterday had a maybe not, I don't want to call it a rough day in coverage, but that turn and run, he's going to have to prove at the safety spot, right? So Spencer Shannon is an inline blocker. I think that was a really strong point that you made based on what Sark said yesterday. So this class is really deep. And again, year one, the year two, outside of offensive line, which sometimes is a bigger development position, year one, the year two is where these guys in college make the biggest jump. And we're talking about all these positions. We're talking about some guys that are starters that could be all SEC level players. We're talking about some guys who are going to be part of the rotation. We have talking about second team quarterback and Arch, a future multi-year starter. But to tie it all together, what we're talking about is how does this 2024 Texas team maximize their season? And if Texas is going to maximize their season, how many of these guys make that traditional big jump from year one to year two of college football? Those guys who are frontline players, if they make the big jumps, you saw Quinn, year one to year two, huge jump, right? I mean, you can go down the list of guys who made big year one to year two jumps. Bijan Robinson did.
Yeah.
I mean, if Texas gets that out of these guys this year, then that preseason top 5 ranking may actually come home.
Yeah. And it's an important class, no doubt about it, in my opinion. All right. Jerry, you're literally about 200 yards from where they're going to be working out in a couple of hours here. I'll meet you down there. You're over at the LBJ school, which is just across the street from the Bubble and the UT practice fields, Dennis practice fields. For Gerry Hamilton, I'm Bobby Burton. This has been On Texas Football Production. Thanks again also to our friends over at 40 Acres Collection and the University of Co-op. We'll see you soon, Jerry. Hook 'em.